You know, trading with villagers is very satisfying. I gather a bunch of resources beforehand and now I just dump all of them to the faces. Now they are giving me their emeralds, XP, and whatever items that I need from them. The whole process just makes me very happy. Did I just describe a shopaholic behavior? They trade considerably and I don't have a problem in real life if you're wondering. Thank you. Moving on. I do need quite a lot of emeralds and XPs because look at my gear. I just have a set of iron armor, even though most of them are enchanted, but they are not even good. Now, I am not an adventurous player. I am not taking any risk of dying while gathering any building blocks around the world. Therefore, more resources means more emeralds and XPs equals me gearing up faster. I have some flint and iron that I can take from this create farm and trade with the villagers. And then I also have these crops that I could use for trading with the farmers as well. But I am really getting sick to chop down the pumpkins and melons time to time just to get a small yield out of it and then come back later and do the same thing. It's distracting and quite tiring to do that. So today I want to tackle this and make an automated pumpkin and melon farm. This farm is a temporary one, so I'm putting it next to the other automated farms. I'm also making this farm back to back, so one side is the pumpkin and the other side is the melon, and the middle part is obviously the water source. Then I put some belts there to funnel everything to the middle for easier collection. I want all the farms to be a part of the world as well, which means there should always be some meanings for a build to exist in a certain space. That probably will also affect how it looks and how it functions. So in the future, when I figure out where to put this, then I will move it there and make an official build. I have AFK here for a while, so let's take a look at how much we get from the farm. It's not a lot. From 2 layers, I think it's pretty much okay. I can add more layers if necessary. But now I got a passive melons and pumpkins income, which is one step closer to my shiny armor dream. When I first came across this place, I was immediately drawn to this dented area. I think with the village being mainly down here, it also makes this corner extra relaxing. What makes it more interesting is we can see the ravine from here. This is a very unique scenery. And with those vibes I get from this area, this is very much a transitional space. The pacing here is probably slower than the surroundings. And to fit into the world building, at one point of time, I think this area will turn into a park, which is our next focus. This place will allow people to have a moment of pause from whatever they're doing and just enjoy their time here. And just like the escalator, we are going to keep the Art Deco theme going here as well. As you can see, there are some existing buildings here. There are some preparation work that we have to do then, which means we have to relocate the villagers and do some terraforming. We got a better canvas now. I think we can start doing some blockouts around here. And the first thing we have to decide is where will the SS points be? I think there will be 3 entrances to go into this park, and the first one is here. We can just dig a tunnel here because it directly leads us to the bottom of the escalator. The second entrance will be from this staircase that I made last time. We go down for a bit, and then we can go into the wall and slowly lead us to the level of the park. And the third entrance will be coming from the ravine. Obviously, there's no path right now on the ravine side. The only thing that it gives is death. But if you look at the other side, there is actually an opening What I can do here is I can add a staircase and bring it down to around this level. And then we can introduce a trail here that hugs along this contour of the ravine and then lead to the other side of the mountain. I think this can be a very interesting circulation, especially in the future when there are more buildings around this area as well. All of the entrances have a similar purpose. Well, first, they connect the neighboring area to the park. Second, when you get close to an entrance, you start to have a preview of the park from a certain angle. You're not seeing the full picture, so you're like peeking through it. But that should get your interest to see more. And thirdly, all of the entrances are narrow and tight corridors, so they kind of have a transition effect. You're going from your previous area and through this narrow space and then welcomed with this spacious park that you see. So visiting this park is kind of a build-up experience. And then we are adding a glass barrier here at the edge of the park. So then we can look from here to the ravine safely. There, looking all mysterious. I think I'll add an edge here just to blend it better, but I'll do that later. Now we need a focal point to gravitate the attentions to the park. And I think a fountain should do the trick pretty well. We just have to build it at the center of the park, which is roughly where the emerald blocks is. But it cannot be just a simple circular fountain. It needs to have some drama. One of the characteristics of Art Deco is that it influences from cultures around the world, and it borrowed some of those cultures' features and applied it into the aesthetics. I think we can do that here as well with the fountain by turning this into an obelisk-like structure. That way it has a very commanding presence, and it's a very tall structure that even the upper layer can see it. And finally at the bottom, that's where we can poke some holes to make the fountain part work. I have gathered the resources. I think we can start building from the base. Now I don't want it to be a circle, and instead I want it to be a rhombus. What a term. I think the last time I said this term was back when I was really young at school during some math classes. I think this is a good scale in comparison with the middle part. Now we need to decide how tall will this structure be. The obelisk has to be tall enough so that the upper layer can see it as well. I think something like this is good. Primarily, the whole obelisk and the fountain part below will be using smooth sandstone. And I think I can use some variant of it to add some detail later on. Now at the top, I think what I want to do is I can add a light and add a wall like this. Then there is light at the tip of the structure, and if you look at it, it does look like it's converging to a point as well. Done with the height, now we can work on the fountain part. I'm going to make it thicker just by 1 block so I can make more details with it. And as I build higher later, I can just keep it with 1 block. Now this is a fountain, obviously. Water will come out of this structure. And I want when people go from this entrance, they can already see the water coming out. We can poke a hole around this level and let the water drop down from there. Like this. And then block here. That looks good. So we would do the same from behind as well.
I want the water to come out from the side as well, but if the water source is at the same height as the other one, from this angle, I think it will look quite boring. Instead, I think I'll just put 1 or 2 block higher.
Something like this. Now this side is staircase, but this side is just a half slab. I think it looks better to have a little bit of depth there. I think I'll do this here as well. Well, the water kind of blocked it, so it might not be that obvious. Looking cute so far. Now, one thing I really want to get from this obelisk fountain is when you look at it, you feel like it's a bunch of simple geometry and they kind of just merge together into a bigger piece. And I think these blocks, they help to create that aesthetic. This looks really cool with the water in already. I will have to dig down 1 block here, but I'll do that later after everything is done. This is a point of interest. It does kind of attract you to go into this space.
This is sort of the midway of the obelisk. I think I want a light source around here.
Glowstone is the only light source block that I have right now, so I'm just keeping it like this until I have a better one. Now from this layer onwards, this is where we can also see the obelisk from the upper layer. And I think we can put a different motif here. What I want is this motif will attract our attention from afar, and then so we will start walking closer to wonder what this is exactly. And then boom, it's a fountain. And we can also register this is a park.
It's a relaxation space.
And we want to go down. And what motif that we can do here? Statues.
If you look at some Art Deco skyscrapers,
sometimes you can see they have like corner statues. And I think we can do something like this here. Does this look statues to you? Probably not, right? But let's focus on the different texture. From the sandstone stair upwards, that's the torso of the statues. And there are 4 statues, 1 on each side. And then these walls, they are the arms. It doesn't really look like it, I think, because we're missing something. What about now? I mean, with my face on it, it looks hilarious. I wanted to use another head, but right now that's the best head I can find. But I took inspiration from some skyscrapers. They have statues like this that hold objects with their hands. Right now, I think the emerald block is the best mini block that I have collected. So I'm just using it here. And then we remove a layer of the fountain and add the water in. And how does it look now? Oh my god. I love this. Looking from above, it looks amazing as well. Of course, this is not done. I still have to replace the blocks inside the fountain and maybe change up some of the blocks to add a little bit more texture. Oh, but I'm loving this outcome right now.
hello. So here's an update. As you can see from this defeated scene, I died because of my stupidity. Oh my god, I am so frustrated about that, but okay. So I was grinding some of the materials in the nether, and I was like, let's record some extra footage just in case. And I have to go out to look for the warp forest because I need some of the materials over there. Then I go through this giant lava lake and then finally get there. And I got everything, so I just rode my strider back home. And in the middle of the lava lake, I was like, okay, I probably don't have anything surprising me anymore, so let's stop recording there. And I forgot that I have bind my shift to stop recording. And so I dropped into the lava. There is a land next to me, but I just could not make it. Oh my gosh. And I just watched everything sunk into the lava lake. I almost cried at that moment because it took me like hours to gather everything. And also, that's my only set of armor. Now I have lost everything. I have to restart everything. Anyway, so just letting you know and moving on now.
I have finally gathered the materials I need from the nether. In fact, after the tragedy, I have upgraded all my gears to diamond tier and also revenge enchanting. Now, most of my gears and tools are basically in top tier enchantments, which is a little bit over the top, but I will need that eventually, so hooray! Also, who would have thought just one stupid dev will motivate me immediately to achieve my gear dream that I just mentioned a little bit earlier in this video. I'm not complaining though. Now I'm pretty much safe to travel everywhere and gather anything that I need. Right, now I can finish the bottom of the fountain. Start with the wall. I'll be using birch logs here. And then we are stripping them. It's slightly darker than the sandstone, so it feels like this is the water level. Now the fountain floor is the reason why I need to go to the nether in first place, because I want to use this block, the warped warts block. Oh my gosh, it's so difficult to pronounce. I'm just going to call it W square or something. So yes, the W square. I know I want to bring another color into the build because the build is just yellowish white. This can add as an accent color. I think the structure is more excel at its silhouette. This is an obelisk, so it's expected that it has a rigid and more simplistic form. And there's not a lot of color variety, but I can push the boundary of the shape a little bit by adding smaller blocks around the structures. You see there are blocks, stairs, while maintaining the general form of an obelisk. So even without a lot of colors and textures, it still becomes more interesting to look at, and people still can recognize what this structure is. That being said, those details are more top heavy, which is something that we can more likely to observe if we're standing at the higher level. And with the Wawa block placed down there now, there is something to balance the visual weight. At the top, we have small texture details to look at. Meanwhile, at the bottom, there is a contrasting color for us to see. So there's two different elements for us to look at. And added back the water, this is pretty much done. You know what? The Minecraft water is so blue that it kind of didn't really matter with the W square blocks. But I think if we look closely, it still offers a very unique texture. So I stand by it. Not a lot of changes. I made this green wall surrounding the park. They are just spruce and birch leaves. I love this so much. Just with them, the whole park already feels so much more cozy. I also add a line of granite at the edge of the ravine side. I think the place feels more reinforced and it's safer to stand around here to look down. And of course now we have the path that also connects to all the entrances. I'm pretty happy how it looks. There are some similar block types here to break the pattern. It's pretty standard now. But I didn't place it in pure randomness. I imagine the park being a rather popular space around this area. So a lot of people will come here to hang out. Now this is very important and I want the path to reflect this kind of user behavior. The more people visit the park, the more will they use the pathway. And eventually there will be some worn trails here and there in the pathway. But where should I place those trails? That's where we can apply the concept of desire lines. Fancy term? But in essence, it means people just try to find the shortest route to their point of interest. With that in mind, I think it shaped a more meaningful randomness that I can work with. And if you look around, this is why we can find more mud bricks at the corner or the edges of the path, and more likely pet mud in the middle. or even mushroom blocks to indicate a higher traffic in those places. Now you may think, doesn't the desired path also apply to this side? Yes and no. Originally, I wanted to utilize the water that we had here and make a pond out of it, but we already have a fountain, so scrap that. So eventually there will still be a path around here to there, but we also need to section this part off first. There we go. The main part of this section is it should give you the feeling that you have more privacy. If there are a lot of people outside, you have a choice to come in and have a little bit more privacy. Right now, it's still very spacious, so it's not very private per se, but I believe after we decorated it, things will feel different again. Well, we can work with the path first. Should I? No. And added some potted plants at a corner here and at both of the openings to the secret corner. Added some more details. Now there is a path going through to the other side. 2 benches on each of the corner. There's also a little bit of detail with the signs, and I added a little bit of pattern. For the other bench, it's pretty much the same, but because it's right under the staircase, and it has a little bit more space behind the bench, I think this side feels much more private. For that reason, I wanted to add something, some details behind the bench. Maybe someone wrote a message, but I can't really think of one right now. I'll add it back when I find one really good. I'm using gold lichen in this area. I want this place to be much dimmer. If you compare with outside, this is so bright. This is very lit. I mean, right now it's just torches, but there will be lampposts and mixture is much brighter here. And inside this area is much darker. I wanted it to feel like when you come in here and sit down, just rest, this feels like your secret base. The next thing I want to do is to add 2 trees here. One around here and another one around here. It just cannot be blocked by the staircase. These 2 trees should be able to give even more coverage in this area, so to increase the secrecy. I'm describing these 2 trees because I want to custom make them. I have never made custom trees before in Minecraft, so this is quite a challenge for me as well to make it look good, but let's see how it goes. I'm thinking the branch could go a little bit towards this side or out to the path a little bit. That is for providing the coverage that I was talking about. And if the branch is going towards more on this side, maybe I can widen the base here a little bit. I think the trunk height will be around this. We still have leaves about it as well, so after adding those, it will be rather tall. And I think it will be around the same level as the upper layer. Now, as you see, I put some walls here, specifically nether brick wall. I kind of wish they have some brown colored walls that I can use here. This is the closest palette that I can find. I'll mainly use fences as the branches, but as you see, if I try to put the fences right next to the wall, it doesn't connect. So one way to do it is to use fence gate instead. And then I can connect the fence gate with fences. Now let me try to toy around with the branches and look at the shape. And then after that, we can see how it looks.
The branches are leaning more towards the path and the bench. So to counter that weight, I'm adding a little bit more blocks to the root on the same direction.
Now I can add the leaves in and see how it goes. Tree 1 is completed. Let's go in and take a look.
Now I added the leaves, the tree looks much bigger. I have also extended the branch a little bit over here and in the middle. So it has a bigger volume.
I used 3 different kind of leaves. At the bottom is spruce leaves, and then in the middle a little bit of dark oak, and at the top is just oak leaves. I think that gradient gives an illusion of the sun is shining onto the top of the tree, and then the bottom part is just the shades.
I really like that when you stand under the tree at a certain spot, you can actually see through it. I think this adds quite a bit of depth to the tree, rather than just seeing a puff of leaf blocks.
I mean, walking from this side, it looks pretty good as well. Let's try sit down and take a look. It doesn't feel too oppressive. I mean, here is a little bit much. Maybe we can remove this. But it gives a good coverage without really blocking the whole view. People can still see you sitting here in daytime, but I think that's not the problem. This is the view from above with the free cam. I can't even see myself down there. And also from this angle, the tree looks kind of cool. I think the tree did blend a little bit to the green wall. We don't really see the whole silhouette of the tree from this angle. Maybe I can do a little bit more, add some other blocks to create a more distinct silhouette for the tree from this angle, but I'm not too bothered by it right now. First tree down, now time for tree 2, but I think now we have a problem.
Let's say if I'm putting the second tree here. It's just going to touch the stairs above, and I don't think it looks good. Besides, there's really not much space here. Once I build a bit of branches,
it's definitely just going to merge with this tree. And I like this tree being close to the first bench. Maybe I can put the second tree around here and then lean towards the second bench. I think that might work. I can reduce the volume of this branch a little bit so it does not merge together. And this second tree probably can be slightly smaller because now it's too close to the wall section and it will blend with it again. How does it look?
The second tree is slightly smaller than the first one.
I did reduce some of the branches of the first tree, so it gives a little bit bigger gap in between. I think the shape itself is pretty okay. I'm not too sure how it looks from here. It feels like it's just directly pointing to the bench. Maybe I can do a little bit of curve here instead.
But overall, I think these two trees give this corner so much character.
It's definitely a very private and secret place. I like how dim this place is, and I checked the light value around this area. I don't see any 0 value, so I think we're good. But if we really need extra lights around this area, I might put some glow lichen on the tree. I really want to make it as dim as possible. Let me do a little bit more tweaking and then we can move on.
The secret corner is done, so let's decorate the rest of the park as well. I have added quite a bit of details already in between. Mostly they're just grass, flowers, rocks. Pretty much the same as what I have done in the secret corner.
but it is a little bit more structured on the outside. If you look at the ferns, they are somewhat planted in a repeated pattern. We use this kind of fern pattern as well on the bigger green field, but only on this edge, because we have to allow people to get to the picnic tables. Now the picnic tables are pretty standard. They're just some trapdoors and campfires at the seatings. They're not really the focal point. The focal point is the fountain. People come here to look at the fountain, but use the picnic table or, the surroundings as well. Obviously, I don't want anything to block this view, so it's pretty empty here. I might add a little bit more grass here, but it depends. I would say, functionally, this park is pretty much done.
I think if we compared with the secret corner, the corner feels very cozy, and there's much more details to look at.
Meanwhile, on the outside, even though there are already some grasses, flowers everywhere, it still feels empty. I think the main thing that is lacking is trees and lampposts for an actual light source as well. I've placed some scaffoldings around the park. They indicate where roughly I want the trees to be. Let me quickly build them.
I have finished decorating the park. Are you excited to see it? Are you? Well, I am. So let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Ta-da! Do you still remember how it used to look like before all of these? Earlier, this place still felt very empty, but with the trees in now, it definitely feels much livelier. And now we have actual light source everywhere in the park as well. Let's take a closer look at everything. I think making custom trees and making them pretty is challenging. I have to keep the tree relatively small, so I really can't do much with the branches, but I still managed to use fence gates and fences to make something interesting to look at. The other tree here, I managed to make an arch here and also make 2 main branches, so it has a little bit of variety. And this is definitely the biggest tree in the park. I am really happy how the curve looks and how the roots are. Of course, one of the major things to make a custom trees is to figure out the overall shape. I like that there are holes you can see through when you're under the tree. It makes it even more believable. Since it's nighttime, we can talk about the lights. The tall lampposts are the major light source, and I think I'll use the same design or a similar one outside the park. I was struggling to find something that connects the light and the supports, but I'm so glad that I realized brewing stand is an option. It adds so much detail within one block. I had to add these smaller lights around the park as a secondary light source. If I try to use the same lamppost design here, as well as the other corner, the park will become very noisy. I also want to show you another thing. So when I was working on the trees in a secret corner, I used different leaves to create the illusion of shading, yeah? I also did that with the newer trees. The higher the leaves are, the brighter they are, but also it is brighter when it's closer to a light source. This detail is really fun because it creates a physical interaction between the objects that I have made, and it feels like both of them live in the same space. I can definitely do more details like that, like changing some of the branches and swapping out the floors that are near the light sources, but I can always come back to these details in the future. Especially when there are more builds around here and I realize I need this kind of details. Now the park is done, there are 2 things that I still need to work on. Mainly the corridor next to the escalator and the staircase on the other side. I'm not really going to touch the alleyway just yet. The entrances need to give off the transitional effect and also bring the attention to the park and also the fountain. So what I would do here is to make the corridor dark and also use more desaturated blocks in contrasting to what we have in the park. I like using walls in narrow spaces like this. It creates some small details that we can't do it usually.
We can dig 1 block deeper behind the wall. Then the wall will look like a half slab.
The second entrance uses a similar palette as the first entrance. Now this entrance has most of its pathing inside the wall, so there's no natural lighting here. If the interior is too narrow and tight, it will feel very suffocating. On top of that, there is dark color in the palette, so I had to be very careful while decorating this space. One thing I tried earlier is to have a peekaboo opening on the second floor, so you can look down at the stairs from above at a certain angle, but the second floor is just too packed. It doesn't feel right. At the end, I just remove all the supports in the middle of the room and turn it into an open space. And immediately the space feels much friendlier. I also use a lot of walls to widen the space a little bit more and add subtle details. And I have to say, wall is so crucial to help proportionizing such tight space. I didn't like how the wall looks next to the stairs, so I tried to toy with other options, and I end up with kelp blocks, which is an interesting choice. It is a dark value block, so it doesn't deviate much with the palette, but it has that bit of green, just enough to stand out from the surroundings. And I think because of that, it sort of become the point of interest in the room. It doesn't have much details on it, but it's unique enough to give you something to look at, which sort of slow down your pace while traversing, instead of pressuring you to leave this place as quickly as possible. Of course, I also add more textures and details around the bridge stair entrance, specifically railings and supports that matches the vibe. And I add some blocks to frame the entrance. Both entrances are done. Now all is left is to add the final bit of detail that gives life to this place. The park sure looks lovely now, but humans will leave traces around the park with their activities. And so one thing I have added is some coins in the fountain with the armor stand data pack. You can tell some people here love to use this fountain to make wishes. And remember the Easter egg I want to work on that chair? I decide not to do that. Instead, I do something similar with a carved message behind a tree. I don't think a park is a park without any carved message behind at least one of the trees. Oh, and I also added trash cans in the park. Let's do a recap. I made a temporary pumpkin and melon farm, die in the middle of gathering materials, and right after, upgrade my gears to diamond and build a park. I am very happy how the park turns out, and it makes me very excited to expand this place even more. But I think it's a good time to conclude my video. But before I go, I would like to share with you a camera tour of the park. So please enjoy it, and I'll see you next time.